Welcome to the Ask Junior Daily Judgment Podcast. I'm Priya Sharma, and joining me today is Arjun Gupta.
Hello, everyone. We're excited to dive into today's important judgments. But before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast if you enjoy our daily legal breakdowns.
That's right. Your support helps us reach more listeners and continue providing in-depth analysis of the latest court decisions. Now, let's get started with today's case. Arjun, today we'll be exploring a case from the Supreme Court of India, Kamarudin Dastagir Sanadi versus State of Karnataka. It's a fascinating case that delves into the complex concept of abetment to suicide and the legal framework surrounding it.
Absolutely, Priya. Let's break down the facts first. The case revolves around a young woman named Suvarna who had been in a relationship with the accused, Kamarudin, for 8 years. They had allegedly promised to marry before the village council, or panchayat. However, Kamarudin left the village and moved to Kakati, Karnataka, 4 months before the incident. When Suvarna met him in Kakati and he refused to marry her, she tragically committed suicide by consuming poison. Tau.
So this is a heartbreaking story, Arjun. It raises some crucial legal questions. What are the legal issues at the heart of this case?
Precisely. The main legal questions are: firstly, did Kamarudin's actions constitute abetment to suicide under Section 306 of the Indian Penal Code, IPC? Abetment means encouraging, aiding, or instigating another person to commit a crime. Secondly, was Kamarudin guilty of cheating under Section 417 of the IPC? This section deals with deception for the purpose of inducing someone to deliver property or valuable security. Thirdly, was the High Court justified in overturning the trial court's acquittal of Kamarudin? This question raises the issue of appellate jurisdiction and the standards of review applied by higher courts.
Let's focus on the first question about abetment to suicide. Arjun, could you explain how the court approached this complex legal concept?
Sure, Priya. The court emphasized that abetment requires a mental element known as mens rea, which means a guilty mind or intention. To be found guilty of abetment to suicide, the accused must have clearly intended to provoke or incite the victim towards self-harm. The court found that mere refusal to marry, as in this case, does not inherently satisfy the legal threshold for abetment.
That's a crucial point, Arjun. You're saying that simply breaking off a relationship, even if it leads to emotional distress, doesn't automatically equate to abetment to suicide. It's important for the prosecution to demonstrate that the accused actually intended to provoke the victim into committing suicide.
Exactly, Priya. The court also examined the evidence presented, including Suvarna's dying declarations. These declarations did not indicate any physical relationship between the deceased and the accused, which weakened the prosecution's case. There was no corroborative evidence to support the claim that Kamarudin had promised to marry Suvarna before the panchayat. Additionally, the fact that Suvarna carried poison from her village suggests a premeditated decision rather than an impulsive reaction to Kamarudin's refusal. This further supported the court's conclusion that her actions were not solely a consequence of his behavior.
It seems that the court's reasoning in this case hinges on the idea that the accused's actions must be directly and intentionally linked to the victim's suicide. Could you explain the significance of this reasoning, Arjun?
Yes, Priya. The court relied heavily on the principle of mens rea. It's a fundamental concept in criminal law that underscores the importance of a guilty mind. The court reiterated that for a conviction under Section 306 IPC, there must be clear evidence of positive acts that directly led to the victim's decision to commit suicide. It's not enough for the accused's actions to merely contribute to the victim's emotional distress. The court clearly stated that domestic discord, while tragic, does not automatically imply criminal liability.
This judgment seems to emphasize the importance of a strong causal link between the accused's actions and the victim's suicide. Could you illustrate this with an analogy, Arjun?
Sure, Priya. Imagine you're driving down a busy street and someone suddenly cuts you off, causing you to swerve. As a result, you end up in a minor accident. While the other driver's action might have contributed to the accident, it would be very difficult to argue that their actions directly caused the accident. In this case, The court is saying that just because Kamarudin's refusal to marry contributed to Suvarna's emotional distress doesn't mean his actions directly caused her suicide. There must be a clear causal link between the accused actions and the victim's decision to take their own life.
That analogy makes the court's reasoning much clearer, Arjun. So ultimately, what was the court's decision in this case?
The Supreme Court overturned the High Court's judgment and reinstated the trial court's acquittal of Kamarudin. They concluded that refusing to marry someone does not automatically constitute abetment to suicide, especially when there is no evidence of instigation or a guilty mind. This judgment underscores the importance of proving mens rea in abetment cases.
This decision seems to have significant implications for future abetment cases, Arjun. Could you elaborate?
Yes, Priya. This case sets a strong precedent for future cases involving abetment to suicide. It reinforces the necessity of proving a direct causal link between the accused's actions and the victim's suicide. It also highlights the importance of demonstrating the accused's intent to incite or provoke the victim towards self-harm. This judgment emphasizes that emotional distress, even arising from a broken relationship, is not enough to establish criminal liability.
That's an insightful analysis, Arjun. While this case focuses on abetment to suicide, it also highlights the need for careful examination of evidence and the application of legal principles. It serves as a reminder that the law demands more than mere emotional fallout from personal relationships to establish criminal liability.
Absolutely, Priya. It also reinforces the significance of upholding the right to a fair trial and the need for a rigorous assessment of evidence before reaching a guilty verdict.
And that wraps up our analysis of today's judgment. We hope you found our discussion informative and engaging.
Before we sign off, we'd like to remind our listeners once again to like, subscribe, and share our podcast. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue bringing you daily updates on the most important legal decisions.
Absolutely. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow for another exciting episode. Until then, this is Priya Sharma.
And Arjun Gupta, signing off. Thanks for listening to the Ask Junior Daily Judgment Podcast.